Okay, so these tapes are so important. This is so important that it came out the way it came out, especially the way she did it so beautifully in every single way. She's so guided, and it was so beautiful the way she did it, because
so many stories throughout this entire these tapes, and it just gets more and more the more you go into it.
Well, we're all nonverbal, learning to communicate, and we're all verbal, trying to learn to communicate nonverbally in the telepathic realm, which is the conscious realm, which is the unseen realm. So many ways we're all learning to communicate multidimensionally, to say it easily. Hello everyone, welcome. I'm Lady O, intuitive empath, shaman, and co-founder of our psychic work alongside my husband Riz Mirza, a gifted psychic medium and trance channel. Recently, he channeled a powerful message from Phineas right here on this podcast, revealing that telepathy isn't just a phenomenon, it's a natural consciousness we all possess. Today, I'm joined by my wonderful assistant and astrologer, Erica Merriweather. Erica has firsthand experience working with nonverbal children and offers insightful astrology readings to their parents, helping them understand their child's unique energetic imprint. For over 15 years, we've been guiding verbal individuals and tapping into their innate telepathic abilities and remote viewing abilities, both in person and here on our metaphysical podcast. And today we're diving deep into the Telepathy Tapes, a groundbreaking podcast directed and hosted by American documentary filmmaker Ky Dickens. Our podcast sheds light today with our personal experiences and take on this fascinating topic, and this test conducted by neuroscientist Dr. Diane Hennacy Powell, demonstrating that many, if not all, nonverbal and autistic savant children possess extraordinary psychic abilities. Not only is there empirical evidence to support this, but the world is starting to awaken to its own psychic potential. As more people recognize these abilities within themselves, we are witnessing a profound shift, one that challenges the rigid, materialist perspectives of science and education. These extraordinary children are here as teachers, helping us rediscover our true selves. Our true natural form of communication, telepathy. So get comfortable, open your mind, and let's explore this together. Well, Erica,
yes,
I'm very excited to have this show today.
I know, me too.
So the first time that you brought this to my attention was a couple weeks ago, because I believe that Ky actually dropped her documentary and her podcast on YouTube in November of 2024.
Yes.
So it's relatively new.
Yeah.
But of course, you always dig out all the gold and you find it. And so you found these tapes and you listened to all, I think it's 9 episodes?
10.
10. Okay. And you listened to all of them and came over to me like you found a pot of gold, and you're like, you're not going to believe this. You're not going to believe this. Not only is it everything that we love and talk about and teach and obsess over and work with our clients, but it also goes into the world that you're interested in with working with nonverbal children, because you're an astrologer for nonverbal children and their families. And then on top of that, well, just the magic of telepathy, of course. And so all of the above. And you were like, you're not going to believe this. And it was a perfect time in my life, because I was waiting for something awesome to come into my life, because I have been doing this work for so long. And after a while, you just get to the point you're like, well, I guess I'll get it when they get it. This is taking forever. I don't know when they're going to get it, but people will eventually start to understand psychic phenomenon is within all of us. And, you know, when you're doing the good work on the front lines, you just get a little tired, because you just are like, you know, we're waiting for science to catch up with us, and we're waiting to not be the laughing stock, and we're waiting for this, and we're waiting for that, and we're so tired and bored and waiting. And you're like, no, wait, there's something special here. Right. We have documented tests, and we have children actually showcasing with empirical evidence in a very controlled environment, showing not only psychic abilities, but extreme telepathy at the speed of thought. Super fast, and they're here to show us and guide and teach us verbal people and their parents how to casually be telepathic and trust it. And I thought, okay, so this could be a pivot. This could be where more of the science community gets involved, because they almost have to, because we're getting to a point where what choice do we have, right? Because science is coming up against a lot of it's like dead ends where
unexplainable phenomenon.
Right.
That keeps happening over and over and over again.
And they don't have the tools to measure. And it's not coming from a material law. It's coming from a non-physical conscious reality that's undefinable. And you can't explain with your human earthy tools of 2024.
Right.
And so science says, well, it's not real, but there's so much evidence that shows that it's real.
Right.
So what was the most exciting part for you when you first heard it?
Oh my gosh. So many parts of it. You know, I agree with you with the undeniable aspect of it, because there were certain stories where the parents were talking about, I'll never forget, I can't remember the name of which family it was, but there was one child who was able to communicate with his mother in dreams. Okay. And she said, you know, she had this kind of lucid dream one night. And in the dream, he put a playing card up to his eye like this. It was very strange. It was really not something that you would expect someone to do. And she remembered the dream. She woke up and she came downstairs, and he was at the kitchen table. She was making him breakfast, and he likes playing cards. So there were playing cards like on the table, and he took the card and looked at her and put the card up to his eye, exactly the same way he had done in the dream.
And up until that point, do you think the mother knew about his psychic abilities? Okay, so this is the first time.
This was really one of the first times. She had a very kind of intuitive connection. She could feel him, but it was the first time that it crossed into her dream world, and that it was so blatantly, I'm communicating with you. And then it just escalated from there in how much he could communicate with her. But so many stories throughout this entire these tapes, and it just gets more and more the more you go into it.
Well, I listened up to the 5th episode because I was so excited. I literally was doing dishes with it in my ear, and I was like, ah. And the thing is, you know, the majority of everything I heard, we teach and we know about being psychics ourselves, right? And being telepathic ourselves and all the above. And I can go into so much detail with that, which is really exciting. But to hear it in from the nonverbal lens and to hear it the way Ky did it so beautifully with Susan Powell, like how wonderful the way they set these tests up, and all the crew and everybody that worked with her so diligently, and all the effort they put in to make sure that these tests were so ironclad, rock solid, thorough, like big barriers and covering reflections in windows to kind of drown out the naysayers and the skeptics. And it was so beautifully done that the children, as they were communicating, they kept saying, I'm like, basically, I'm doing this because it's so important that the world knows about me as an individual, and also this technology, what's available to everybody. And so I'm willing to do all these tests. Right.
And it wasn't just the kids saying we're telepathic. It was that was like level 1. And it was also so that they could show that they are very conscious beings in nonverbal bodies, with very, very sophisticated thoughts, and very you know, a lot of things that they were communicating when they learned how to spell and when they learned how to get this telepathy across were really spiritual teachings, and very not just psychic things, but very deep emotional things.
And I remember on episode 1, they had Mia, the Mexican family, with the mother Ileana. And it was really fascinating. A lot of things came up for me as I was listening to it. Of course, not only was I fascinated, but my mom is from Honduras. And so it was really kind of funny to hear Ileana talk, because she reminded me of my mom, the way she was speaking. And I was listening to the way Ileana was talking about the things that Mia does. So for instance, she can't hide anything from her in the house. Mia can find anything and everything. And then she was also talking about how she kind of can read her mind like an open book. She has no privacy. In other words, like every thought she has, Mia can hear it. And also she always knew like when to show up or how to respond to something, even if she wasn't even supposed to know about it. And the reaction Ileana had, the mom, sounded very similar to the reaction my mom had towards me growing up. And I was verbal my whole life, but my mom said things to me that was very similar that Ileana said to her daughter. And I said, oh, so there's those of us who are verbal that have the same like nonverbal communication, telepathy, higher consciousness, psychic abilities as a child, and the parents know it, or the mother especially sometimes who's closer knows it and says something to us, but nobody knows what it is. So here we are adults, and we're realizing we're really psychic beings. And I'm talking to a lot of people, including yourself and Riz and people, you know, I called my clients and they're finding out, wait a minute, that's my story too. And we're verbal. We are not nonverbal autistic people, but our parents have the same stories. Can't keep a thought, can't keep anything away from her. She can find where everything's at. She could read my mind uncomfortably so. She knows when to call me as soon as I think of her. And then if you think about it, this happens in our day-to-day life all the time. So now we're very aware, oh, of course, we're psychic beings. But nobody knew back then. And I asked you the same questions. And you had the same stories about your mom.
Completely. I felt I had a very psychic connection with my mom as a kid, and she has told me stories of me being like 2 years old and coming up to her and, you know, holding her face and telling her it's going to be okay and reading her emotions, and people like coming up to me in the grocery store and me telling her things about that I would emotionally feel off of strangers that no one would have known that that's there. But I always had this very empathic ability as a little kid that came out right away.
Well, my belief is that I truly believe this with all my heart, that all humans have this innate ability. I believe that we came here with this innate ability, but because of the materialist scientific viewpoint where everything is only measured by what you see in front of you, the material objects, anything that's measured by our tools, then that's the only thing that's valid. That's the only thing that's real. But there's empirical evidence to show psychic ability time and time again around the world for thousands of years. This has been documented, and science is still rigid and not allowing it in their curriculum, in their academics, in their studies. And you have a master's degree.
I do.
Yeah.
Yes.
And what would you think if you brought this to your professors, this information?
Yeah, it would be really, they would be very, I have to think back to when I was in school, but they would be pretty dismissive of it for the most part. And that, you know, it's all about like, well, show me the data, show me your blind studies, show me your empirical evidence. Like it's very, you have to have like a control group and all of these measurable things.
Right.
But if you don't have the instruments to pick up the measurements.
Well, there was this one point that Kit was making was, in science, they say, you know, if you touch the individual, like if you put your finger, your hand, or touch the individual as they are typing in their letterboard.
Right. Then that disqualifies it.
That disqualifies it. But in this documentary, it shows that the kids were actually, there was like the Indian family. I'm trying to remember the name. It escapes me. But I think it was episode 3 or episode 2. And the mother would touch him, but then there was moments where she wouldn't touch him.
Right.
And he was doing it without being touched at all. And literally she would put her finger, but that was enough that it would disprove. So hopefully what my goal is and what my hope is that this documentary is going to rattle or shake up the science community and the psychological community of psychologists and therapists and all these very old school traditional ways of thinking. And it's going to show that there's much more here, right? So tell me about, in your astrology, tell me about how you talk to the families about their kids and why that's important.
Sure. This was, I mean, just to backtrack a second, because it was so confirming for me as an astrologer and what I felt by listening to these tapes. Because what I started to discover as an astrologer was that it was the same theory. It was that kids who are nonverbal, and adults too, have very similar, they have the same things in their charts as you and I do. They have a moon sign, they have a Mercury, it's not like there's less information in their charts. And my approach in astrology is to always look at the deeper layers of who a person is, how they communicate, what their logic, their reasoning, their emotions, what moves them, what they're working on this lifetime. And there can be things in the chart for someone who's nonverbal that you will find around communication that suggests there could be difficulties with communication or with their physical body or their health. But they have all these other things that are like, well, here's what they're learning this lifetime. Here's what makes them feel emotionally safe. Here's how they prefer to communicate with people. And when I started doing readings with the parents, the verbal parents of nonverbal children, I read their charts as if their child was not nonverbal. I just treated it the same as any other kid. And what happened was the parents were telling me, well, you're describing my child exactly. These are things I've always felt that they needed, or I've noticed that they respond to differently and more positively when I do what you're seeing in their chart. And I would never have any prior information, or I deliberately would make sure I didn't know anything about their kid at all. And so that was so confirming to hear what you're reading in their chart about their emotional needs is what I'm feeling as a parent. And also their soul path and all these different things. It was just as deep and rich as a verbal child. And between these tapes and how I feel with astrology is that there's this misconception that people who are nonverbal are not really there all the way.
Right.
And that couldn't be farther from the truth.
Yeah.
They are just as feeling and thinking as everyone else.
And what's interesting is they don't know separation. They don't have that dialogue. They don't have that story. And there's cultures around the world that don't have certain words that are in the English vocabulary. And I don't have them offhand right now, but I know that some cultures don't believe in certain things. So they don't even have the word in their culture. And I think it's the same thing for these highly advanced nonverbal children. They don't have the word separation in their vocabulary. All they see is, why is this person not responding to me? Or why can't they hear me? Or if they do talk to their friends on the hill, like the documentary says, where the kids get together like in a chat room all around the world and they talk to each other.
And the hill is a metaphysical
space.
Multi-dimensional space.
That's what they nicknamed it. Yeah. Which, by the way, I want to let you know. I don't know. I haven't talked to you about it yet.
I feel like, okay, yes, go ahead.
You probably did it too. I don't know, but I went and asked if I could join the chat yesterday.
Did you get to the episode where, I don't know if
I only went to 5.
Okay, so there's a lot that happened.
Oh my gosh. Okay, I can't wait.
And that is, you're going to absolutely love that. Because you can.
Well, I was too excited to wait, you guys. Yeah. I had to get this episode out. I was like, I'm trying to listen as fast as I can. Yeah. But what I did last night is, a couple things happened yesterday I want to tell you about. So I first of all, I psychically went in and I asked if I can communicate to everybody there as a bystander or a listener or somebody who can participate or be like a bridge to help the parents. And to help the parents learn how to psychically communicate with them. And would they allow me to come in? So they know of me right now. I know they do, but there wasn't I didn't hear back. I think there's a lot of this is interesting. This is new. And after this documentary comes out, there's gonna be a lot of psychics who are gonna do that.
Yeah,
and they do that on the doc.
They discuss it. Do you mind if I give?
Tell me. What episode is it? Is it towards?
It's towards the end.
Okay.
And so just some background if people haven't haven't listened to it yet. The hill is this place. What happened was a lot of the kids started telling their parents, through spelling, which is the assisted way that they can communicate, that they were going to this place called the hill. And that would be where they would talk to other nonverbal children. And what blew people away was that there were kids all over the world saying this, and they all called it the hill, and they knew each other. They'd never met in person. So there was no way that, it would be like me saying, well, in my dreams, I go to the hill, and then someone in India who has never met me before and
or
doesn't
spoke
know
to you
exist, says, I met this woman named Erica on the hill. So that's what was happening. So they started to discover that they're meeting in this metaphysical place. And then there was someone who was verbal who worked with these children that was able to get there and started communicating with them on the hill. And then they break it down to, your vibration has to be very, very, very much grounded in love.
And you also have
a protected place.
It's protected, but not only grounded in love, your intentionality and your convictions and everything, like you said.
Right.
But you have to be aligned, basically, in the whole conversation and the communication. And, that's not just happening like yesterday. You learn how to do that. It's something that you come to the planet with, and you're invested in this conversation to communicate through your heart-centered, like you would say, your heart-centered chakra, or you would be communicating through a different space within yourself. And so since I already know I'm that, I just said, well, let me see. I tiptoed in. I was like, I know it's weird, but if you guys would allow me. And what was really funny is, who knows if I've been a bystander all along. I just have never really known. It is coming now forward to our consciousness, which is what's happening on a macro scale. All of these conversations are coming forward, which has already been latent in all of us. I wanted to tell you what happened after this little tap, tap, tap when I tried to enter. I thought of a client of mine who has a nonverbal son. And I thought, wonder if I can communicate with the son and ask him, because she hasn't had any success in the communication. And he can only say like one or two words, really. And he can't say sentences, and he has all the other, he doesn't have a lot of body control and things like that. So I wanted to kind of test this theory out to see if it works. And so I reached out to him. I know his name. I reached out to him and asked him if it was okay if I can be a participant to help him and his mother learn to communicate psychically. And I would work with the mother, but I wanted his permission first. And he's young, you know. And I asked, and then I just left it alone, because this is all new territory for me. So I was just like, let's see if it works. And then I texted the mother the tapes, right? Because I don't know if she heard them or not. Yeah. And so it was like half the day went by, and she texted me back and she said, I listened to these tapes when they first came out a few months ago. And she said, I didn't know what to do with them. I talked to my friends about it and some people I know, and they didn't know what to do about it. And they didn't know, they were like, oh, this is cool and interesting, but nobody has the skills or the tools or know what to do. And so she was like, yeah, I heard these. And she said, yeah, I've been thinking about you a lot recently, and I don't know why. And she says, and I'm interested in the fact that you actually sent this to me today. This is very interesting. Let me get back to you later in the day when I have time. She was really busy. I said, okay, great. I would love to talk to you and kind of share this experience with her. Fast forward, the day goes by, and then she finally has a minute, and she's really busy, and she calls me, and she said, well, you're not going to believe what happened. So I have been trying to get my son to use the letterboard and to work with spelling for a while, almost 9 months in his school. And he's had no success. And the teachers were giving up over and over. They were like, he's just not interested and he's not going to get it. And she says, I wouldn't give up on him, and I just couldn't give up on him. And I knew that if they just tried a different approach, or they tried a different way, but she didn't know how to implement the psychic part of it. Right. So she was like, I just went back to the school, and just last week I was like begging them, just please start again, just try again on the letterboard. And I bet he will be able to connect. So he was working on it all week. And then right after I send the text, and she called me, she said 20 minutes after the text I sent, she got a phone call from the school, and the school said, guess what? He just wrote a full sentence, and he said, can I take a break? And I died because I knew he heard me.
You get so emotional.
I can't even take it. Yeah. He heard me. And the reason he went ahead with it is because he knew I was in the picture now. And he knew that I was going to work closely with his mom, and that the connection was now being made. And by the way, thank you for bringing this to me.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah. Don't ever hold back magic from me, Erica. When you find stuff out there in the wild, make sure you bring it back to our little space capsule.
I'm always the space explorer.
She's always out and about. She's always gone, just here and there and there and there. And then she comes back with all these findings sometimes. And I'm over here in like Starfleet engineer, and I'm like working inside the capsule all the time. What did you find out there? Okay, so yeah, this was really huge, and I got very excited. And she says, "Well, I don't really know where to begin with this." And I said, "Well, I'm just going to take it directly from Susan Powell's work. Let's just take some of the tests that she's done, and let's just do the test. Let's start with picture books, covering the cover. You don't know what book it is, and let's study that one page." And ask your son, like, can you guess what mommy's looking at? And choose a time when he's the most calm to do that. And she liked that idea. And also the reward system is very important, because to get them to even be interested to play these games, there has to be a reward. Like they get their favorite.
Yeah.
Like,
as all kids.
Yeah. Like their toy or their snack.
We're all very
or they
reward motivated on this planet.
Seriously. And then the other test was to hold different objects behind like a sheet or something. And then they play the guessing game. And this is to show your child that you are interested in communicating in their world. Right. So now psychic mediums, intuitives like us, are going to be accessed and utilized by parents of nonverbal more, or I mean, they've never done it before, I don't think, but now it's a new thing. It's a new thing. Now they're going to be able to know there's help that they can learn how to access.
Well, it's a natural connection because, you know, in the intuitive world, we've been working with these concepts for decades, for more than decades, for hundreds and hundreds of years. So this whole field to us is very natural. And, you know, the supernatural is very natural for us. So there's a lot of experience here where we are, what I feel is powerful is that parents oftentimes encounter a lot of resistance to the educational community or the scientific community. It's like, that's not real. They'll really be quite dismissive. But in the intuitive community, we're like, of course. Yeah. How can we help?
Yeah, exactly. So if you're watching and you're a nonverbal parent, just know that psychic individuals like ourselves are here to help you to connect to your children. That's what we do every single day. And we're talking to adults about it, and we're talking to verbal people about it. And the things that we focus on telepathy, but also remote viewing. And to break it down even further, we take it further than telepathy.
Right. Can you talk about that? Yeah. Telepathy, it's like the gateway is like guess the object, but it's for a much bigger reason that I know you can explain beautifully. Yeah, so. This is what we hone in on and focus on all the time. We never use the word telepathy in our work because to us it's like the ABCs, it's the building blocks, it's the 1, 2, 3s of our work. So we're always talking about the consciousness. We're talking about the advanced self communicating to the world, to each other. So look at it like this. When you are in front of an individual who's psychic, and you're standing there looking at them and talking to them, they are automatically, without trying, automatically getting a read on you. What does that mean? I know it sounds nefarious. It's not. Yeah. Basically, all it is that you're an open book. Okay. Now, a lot of people don't like that. I get it. And that's why our world needs to evolve, where we are more like-minded and loving human people, individuals, so that we can help each other more. But right now, since there's a lot of division and there's a lot of arguments and there's people with attitude and there's people being mean and there's trolls online and people like to make fun of everybody, blah, 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 that we have going on. It's like a very kind of, it's a rough place to be a psychic. It's not a friendly scape. It's very, you got to be a warrior to be a psychic who's out, who's very verbal and open about being out, because you have to be able to take anything and everything. And it's not just online, it's also in person. So basically, and I'm not talking about healers right now. Let's just talk about the average psychic. So let's say you know you're psychic and you're a psychic being, and then this person steps in front of you. And this is for both parties to understand. So the person steps in front of you, the psychic being, the person, is getting a full read on you. They can see your insecurities. They see what your inner thoughts are, your dialogue. They see where you're hurt. They see what you don't trust. They see your fears. They see what you're concerned about in the moment. They see if you're present or not. They see where your focus and intention is. They see how far back you are removed from reality. If you're in an altered state or a fantasy world, or you're dealing with a biological, like actual mental illness, they can see if you're unhealthy. They can see if the body's out of balance. There's no homeostasis. They can see what core belief systems you're working with. This all happens within a micro millisecond. Yeah. So it's much more than telepathy, right?
your kids, these kids, and I know the tapes are called the telepathy tapes. They should be called the conscious tapes. It's far beyond telepathy.
Yeah.
What the children are feeling and what psychics feel is the whole entire field. They read your whole entire auric field. They feel where you are everywhere, including what you're working on.
Yeah.
Where you are at in your study of self, what you're working on in the world, where your blocks are. That's why psychics become shamans. And that's why the ones that want to turn this into a modality, like myself and my husband and yourself in different capacities, and my daughter, is what we're doing is we're taking this information that's naturally occurring to us, that we naturally get, and we help the person to find the areas where they're blocked from getting what they want.
Right.
It sounds simple. The hard part is the trust factor, because the person who's being read gets very uncomfortable how open of a book they really are. And what is really hilarious to us, and that's why we have a sense of humor, and that's why we dress up in costume, and that's why we're playful, and that's why we have a space set, and that's why we do everything we do, is because we know it's harmless. What we know is that if everybody operated from this place and allowed themselves to be psychic with each other and not block themselves through dogma, rules, science, and all these things that say we're not allowed to do this, or making it a scary, witchcrafty, like some sort of voodoo thing. Instead, they're looking at it as we're here to help one another, to uplift one another. So imagine if both parties now, which is like me and you, like we're a perfect example. So we feel each other, we're psychic, so we feel each other continuously all the time. Now we don't have to be in the same space. She can be far off doing something, and I still get the same feelings, and she can too. I can tune into anybody. Now, as far as like where Riz and I are at, we're at a place where we can see a name from a text from someone. Like someone on our live chats on Sunday nights, they'll text us and they'll say, well, what's going on with my housing situation? And what happens is the second they say that, and the second we get their name and we can find them, it's a very automatic feeling. And what we do is we get a visceral feeling, and that's where the empathic side comes in. The more empathic you are, the more you can feel the full range of emotions that someone has. And so if you're a highly sensitive empathic person, or an autistic empathic person, which they're the same, autistic and empathic, they're the same, because you are empathic if you're autistic, and nonverbal because you feel everything in your environment. So if you are that and you're connecting to somebody, you can get the read and you can see where they're having trouble. So I just kind of in a nutshell and kind of encapsulated the entire aspect of the beginnings of what telepathy is and the full scope of what we do. But now let's take it even further. Now let's take it universal. So it's past just what the advanced psychics on the planet can do that are honed in and making this their modality and working with people like us. Now let's go past us. Now we're going into the bigger realms of consciousness, what we call universal consciousness, which is where the collective hangs out in our own hill, which is the universal consciousness of the planet. So if you see trends and ebbs and flows in political structures, in health structures, belief structures, and what we believe we deserve, etc., core beliefs, the news and what people are promoting, as you start to see trends in this and see how religion is playing a part and science is playing a part. And if you step back far enough, you can see where the collective is. You can see what we're all talking about. And that's a macro of what they do, the kids do on the hill in the micro. So what we're doing here as psychics, communicating to other people on the planet. And then if you pull way back and see what everybody's doing, unbeknownst to you, we're all communicating psychically. So this whole planet is communicating psychically. Now let's take it further back from there. So imagine where we started with the telepathy tapes. Now we're pulling way back into space. Okay.
This is why I love you.
Okay. Now we go further back, and now we're talking to the outer realms, which is the inner realms, but it's a deeper, more significant place where creation is really occurring in the microcosm, in a macro view. So basically what that is it's encompassing everything I just said. And now there's even more information happening in this place. Now I'm going to call this place the other side, heaven, not here in the 3D reality, different dimensional planes. Some people call it the 5th dimension, the 12th dimension, whatever dimension you want to call it. But it's other dimensional, but it is where our higher selves reside. Reside is a big word. So that's where our consciousness is actually actively working with other consciousness that are at the highest intelligence, that is working with these bodies and avatars here. Just like the autistic kid has to work with their limbs and their body and figure out how the connection works. And their parents are trying to help them understand how to do that, which is very, very technical, which is helping the parents become more advanced. So what happens is our higher self is working with these avatars, me and Erica, like our bodies, and teaching us how to navigate and create in this 3D reality and create what we want here. So it is no different in many ways. It's learning how to heal the body, learning how to eat, learning how to take care of ourselves, learning how to be in homeostasis. So we're kind of doing the same thing on a larger scale. So our higher self, our conscious evolved self, knows all of this. There's no separation. We don't think that one person is different than us, bigger or better. We're all bringing our own talents and gifts to the equation, and we're all helping each other. So that's the collective. And that's what's actually the unifying force. That's actually oneness. That's actually what's happening. And our avatars down here are trying to get the message and help each other. So those brave souls who put their neck out and allow themselves to be kicked in the teeth every single day by people who make fun of us, we're saying, listen, we're here in peace, and we're trying to teach you how to navigate in your human body and how to actually communicate with each other and trust your instinct, intuition, and your psychic abilities, and be able to heal the planet and raise the vibration, therefore evolving our planet. And like Tesla says, if we can just go into the non-material world and evolve, like Ky talked about, if we can do that, then we can advance so fast and more and cover more territory than in human history. But we all have to agree that this is real. And what is real? It's whatever you say it is. So that's my take on that question.
Wow.
That's what I love talking about. That's my favorite topic in the world. I love to discuss that because I think everybody needs to understand it. No, anyway, now let me come back down to earth. Okay, let me bring myself back into my body. Okay, so these tapes are so important. This is so important that it came out the way it came out, especially the way she did it so beautifully in every single way. She's so guided, and it was so beautiful the way she did it, because it's covering academic communication. It's also not woo-woo the way they're talking.
They're doing it in a very scientific, kind of empirical method kind of way, which, you know, is needed.
It's needed
to really pay attention to it.
And then to bring in like Susan Powell's like perspective.
Diane.
Oh, I've been saying Susan this whole time. It's Diane. Oh my God. Okay. So yeah, sorry.
We come in peace.
We come in peace. Peace. So, yes, Diane, thank you for the correction.
No
This is why you're a Virgo.
Hashtag
And
Virgo.
this is why she's my assistant. She helps me with these things. So, so yes, what she brought was so amazing to the planet, which is, and when I listen to her and I see how far back she started, I think in the 70s or 80s, like she is just a warrior. I mean, she's just amazing to stand in the face of everybody making fun of her. What did you think of her, Tess, and how she...
I mean, I think it's phenomenal, because the thing that really struck me is, because I was thinking, you know, people have been actually talking about telepathy and, you know, psychic abilities, we've been testing it. All of this has happened for like hundreds of years, but it took a community of people who have such miraculous evidence, and that's what's getting the bigger attention. So yes, number one, to help these kids who need much greater care. You know, they're just not cared for. They don't have enough resources because this understanding had to happen that they are deeply feeling intelligent people with a lot to say. But it also it's undeniable, because if you could take the same evidence with, you know, a verbal kid, and and most people will not take it as seriously.
I agree.
They just say, yeah, okay, so they were a little bit telepathic, but it's very easy to gloss over that.
So it sounds like they came with a kind of a role to play. Like it was a
Yes.
conscious decision
For
to
everyone.
Yeah, to
not
be
just
autistic.
for their own community, but for the planet, for all people.
Well, look what Mia said in the first episode. She said she's writing a book.
Yeah.
And that book, they read an excerpt from it. And basically,
Right.
she's saying she's so happy being autistic. She loves
Yeah.
being nonverbal.
Yeah.
She loves the role she plays on the
Yes.
planet.
Yeah, absolutely. There was, you know what, there was another kid that said later in the tapes, they asked him, what is your favorite thing about yourself?
Mm-hmm.
And his answer was everything.
Nice. Let's have a moment. So that's where we're going, you guys.
Yeah.
That's where this is headed. So if you have a child that's nonverbal, there's, first of all, let's acknowledge the parents that signed up, and let's acknowledge this co-created family unit that everybody decided to be a part of this, including the siblings who play such a major role. And let's talk about the exhaustion factor, which prevents a lot of times from parents to take a perspective shift and to pull back enough, because there's a fight or flight kind of every day, keeping their child safe, keeping them healthy, and their whole life has had to change in order to make this happen. And there's an exhaustion factor, mental exhaustion, emotional exhaustion that the parents have in being able to even sit and get new information to even try to help their child. It takes a lot of effort. And so applauding the work that these parents do to be a part of this collective evolution that we're all having together. So you guys play a major role. And also not to feel bad. It's very important that they don't feel bad that they're just getting this information now, or they didn't know, or they felt like they didn't give their child full access to all the tools and availability so their child can be fully expressed as best as possible. You didn't know. So there's nothing to feel bad about. I know it's hard to imagine if your child you think is trapped. In their world, they're very busy. They have their own interactions with their higher self. They're interacting with their friends on the hill. They have their own world. So it's a pleasure for them if you decide to join their world, right? So
and it's a process.
Yeah.
It's a process. There just hasn't been a lot of resources available. Spelling is still not available to a lot of people.
Right.
So for parents, they don't need to feel bad, because this is the beginning of a lot more possibility for this information to come through.
Well, the parents can also start very simply right now on the spot. They don't even need to do anything. All they have to do is in their mind communicate to their child and ask their child, can you hear me? Now, if the child is not advanced enough in their own telepathic abilities, sometimes their skill set, like if they're savants or in different cases, and I'm not a professional to micromanage this area, but if they, let's say, only focus on people's emotions, they can only read your emotional state. Like the one story where the child started crying in the back seat, or was that you told me that there was a child that started crying? I think it was one of the episodes where the parent was feeling really bad about something in the front seat, and one of the children started crying, the twins, and one of the children started crying. And as soon as she shifted her belief system and changed her way of thinking, he settled down. So some of the children may not be verbally telepathic with you, but are emotionally telepathic. So to isolate and figure it out. And also the stage of life that they're in, what age they're at. They might not be ready now for verbal communication, but will be ready later, or vice versa.
Right.
And many of them who want to communicate through music. You want to talk about the music when children get involved in music
there are,
to communicate?
Absolutely. There's this, again, it was in the tapes that there was one child that this, the kind of the gateway to all of his other communication abilities starting to come through, and even spelling and all of that was through music. So they started doing music therapy first. And through that, they found that, he can't speak, but he can sing. And he actually fully can sing lyrics, and was able to pick up melodies and have perfect pitch. And so that became a portal where all of his other telepathic abilities and lucid dreaming and all these things started coming through, all because of music.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't know necessarily what the access point is going to be. It could be through music, it could be through painting.
So this is the way that their access point. So this was their expression. They needed to get words out. Now, in some cases like this, I think there's a couple individuals you were telling me about that can write how they feel in the song, and they're making beautiful songs. And isn't one
this one
child actually putting the album out? Like he's putting his all his songs
his
out.
music is out, and they played one of his songs, and it was about, the difficulty of spelling and how hard it is to have to, if you have to think about it, like you're doing one letter at a time to write a word. And that's a process. You have to get your body under control to be able to do that. And just try to say something very, very complex, one letter at a time.
Well, what I love is that they see, and I forget the name how to say it, but they could see the letters or the words as a color. And it helps them to put it together faster because they just see the hue of the color. It's green, red, yellow, orange, and they know what the letters are, which is really cool.
Oh my God.
So music is a really important factor because they get to see and hear themselves out in the hearing world in a way that is received and understood. So at the end of the day, everything is about being seen and understood by those around them.
Right. And it's so much, it's not hard to, I don't think it's hard to understand if you look at it like, for verbal people, we have trouble communicating and speaking all the time.
Yes, we do.
All the time.
Yeah.
And a lot of times for us, maybe I can't say it like this, but if I write it, then all of a sudden I'm way more clear. Or if you put it into a painting, that painting conveys something more than you could have said it out loud. This is not like a foreign concept.
Right. They showcase for us where we're at in many ways, right?
Yeah.
There's things that I told something to my youngest daughter the other day, and it was something I've been wanting to say to her. I've been feeling it, but didn't know how to verbalize it or articulate it or even know that I could until a situation occurred that forced me to go, wait, this is the opportunity right here. And I asked her, do you know why I act a certain way around this person? And she goes, no, I always just thought you were awkward. And I was like, oh my God. So I'm really glad you just said that because I have more information for you. So it took me 18 years to tell her why I act like that. And I gave her a very eloquent and very detailed reason why I act that way. It's not because I'm awkward. It's because this is what I'm feeling. And she goes, oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That easy. So it took me 18 years to formulate the words, to figure it out, to even know. First of all, I had to know that I was occurring that way.
Yeah.
Then I had to know that. And she goes, yeah, my sister and I, we always talk about how awkward you are in that situation, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, but that's not what's really happening. It's not that I'm socially awkward. It's because there's a whole thing happening. And so that was the thing I realized in that moment. I saw the correlation.
Right.
I was like, there's no difference in that way. I mean, there's a huge marked physical difference, but there's no difference in the idea that sometimes you don't even know there's words to be said or how to convey something, to articulate it, to explain yourself to an individual, to even have more clarity about how people can see you.
Right.
And look how long it takes us fully functioning adults that are working so hard at communication, intellectually, intuitively, spiritually, and we're trying to connect dots like Tesla, connect, and try to get people to hear, see, and feel us properly.
And part of that comes from we're so taught to not pay attention to our intuitive selves from a very early age. So we're not even raised that it's okay to ask, hey, I'm feeling something. I'm feeling an awkwardness.
Well,
or I'm noticing
explain to me something that you've been telling me over the years. So you want to talk a little bit about where you're from and your upbringing, and so how that affected your communication skills. I find it very fascinating, and I want to hear more. I think she has brilliant things to say on this topic.
Okay. Well, I'm from Erie, Pennsylvania. And it's Midwest, and I was raised in a semi also, religious background as well. And, in a nutshell, basically a lot of the early childhood programming that I had was to not communicate how you really feel about things, to kind of have a layer of politeness here, and then everything else you're feeling is back here, which was really problematic as a kid who could read people in the grocery store and be like, I would get viscerally affected by people because I would see the front polite layer, but I would feel that they were in pain, or I would feel their anger, or I would feel things from them. And sometimes I'd be like, I would tell my mom, like, I'm scared of this person. Like, they're scary. I don't want to say hi to them because I could feel their anger, their pain. But it was always, I just grew up with most of the people around me would put a mask over that. And we were very much taught, like, no, just smile and be nice and keep your stuff to yourself. And because of that, it really shut down. It just creates so much confusion because you get this feeling like everyone's judging you and you're not allowed to ask questions. And so you're taught to ignore your own intuition and ignore your feelings on a regular basis. And it's kind of amazing that I did have some intuitive people around me that in some ways our intuition got really strong because it was such a disconnect that it'd be like, I have to listen to this feeling, even though it's so separate from what I'm seeing. And I kind of had to learn it the hard way of like, what
So
would
give
happen.
an example.
I would feel like very much, I'm trying to think of like a specific, I would sometimes get feelings about like, don't go in this place. Don't go there. Don't do this. And it would be very, very loud. Or I'd feel something about like a friend of mine in high school. And I'd be like, I should not get in that car. Or I shouldn't, that something's off. And it would turn out that I was right. You know, something would happen. And I'd be like, oh my God, like this is true. But
Well, how has it affected you? You know, we're here in LA now, and I noticed first of all, I'm not the normal average LA person. I mean, I am
yeah,
to an extent,
but like,
to an extent, but then even then, I'm still a little off the beaten path. So I remember our communication in the early days.
I was shocked with how
we've been together as friends, and she's been my assistant for 10 years.
Yeah,
over 10 years.
I was shocked with your honesty. That's how I took it.
Yeah.
Like everyone was so honest and straightforward, and I couldn't believe the things that you would
And do
say.
you remember you would question my honesty, and I would go, I was so taken aback and be like, I don't have anything else behind this that I'm trying to convey. Because she was looking for the angle, and she was looking for like,
always.
Where was the trick? And I'm like, what are you doing? Because I saw her doing that. And I would say, I'm just telling you exactly how I'm feeling and what I'm doing. And she would be like, what world is this? I don't know this language.
Like, first of all, I couldn't believe you had the audacity to share how you really felt about things.
How dare I? How uneducated and unsophisticated
is also,
that?
I was in academia for like 6 years, you know, master's, which is just all about like
cover up
everything.
Don't tell the truth.
Don't
hide behind 50 million bricklayers. Yeah.
Argue your case. Like, I was so embedded, so deep.
Yeah.
And so that you'd be so honest about how you felt, and then you'd read me and know like my deeper feelings that I was trying very, very hard.
And you always looked very horrified every time I would tell you.
And then I would think you were judging on top of it.
Right. So then you get mad.
And then I get mad, and then I'd want to hide more.
Right.
And then I'd be like, oh, and you were like, I'm not doing any of those things.
Yeah. It's it's about owning yourself truly.
Yeah.
So how long did it take you to unravel the programming of hiding yourself from Pennsylvania? How old are you now? And walk just quickly. How long did it take you?
So I'm 41. And it took me like 10 years. I think really within it was like 10 years. I had moments of like big growth, but I think when I turned 40, I started to really start to get it about, okay, I don't need to constantly hide who I am. Mm-hmm. And nobody's like,
you started to see where the difficulties in relationship and intimacy and
everywhere, because I would just always try to do it right. That was, if I would say probably one of the biggest, if I wanted to encapsulate my Midwest programming,
mm-hmm.
and look, there's great things about it as well. But I would say there's such an overemphasis on doing it right.
Mm-hmm.
Just make sure you do it right.
Mm-hmm.
And that stopped me from connecting with people in a real way, or anyone knowing who I really was,
mm-hmm.
because I just tried to always be who I thought they needed or wanted me to be.
Well, let's talk about doing it right.
Yeah.
So the word right. So it's passed down through generations, right? So the grandparents and everybody in societies and cultures and different countries and all around the world all have their definition of what doing it right means. And each household is different on what doing it right means. And then we teach it to our kids what's doing it right.
That took me a while to learn that even people had different definitions of what doing it right even means.
So right means I will be accepted and approved of.
Yes.
So it was a very bold move for me to raise my own children. I have 5 children. So to raise them, they're 18 and 32 and 18 to 32. And it took me some time to understand this. But as I started to raise them a very particular way, which is there is no right or wrong. There is only what works and doesn't work for you, what feels good and doesn't feel good for you, what helps you heal and not heal for you, what is an addictive quality or non-addictive decision for you, what is individual for you. If you're angry, it's for you. If you want to learn to communicate, you will learn to communicate. You want information on how to communicate, I will teach you how to communicate. And this is, I consider, a new way of parenting.
Totally.
And a lot of parents I have talked to, believe it or not, there's a lot of parents who have started this way of communicating.
Yeah.
And it's awesome. And a lot of the younger parents also are learning that this is the best way to communicate with your children. But my generation, Gen X, oh my God, it's harder to do it from here because there is still the tradition that's coming through that you're not supposed to do it from this place.
Right.
But it makes sense to them when I bring it up. They're like, well, that's rock and roll. Like that makes sense to me. Like I would want to do that for my children. And I wish my parents did that to me.
Yeah.
So yeah. And you know, it's interesting that we're talking about a nonverbal experience right now. We're talking about our personal experience, but we wanted to show you the correlation of what all of us feel every day, what we're working on, all of the challenges that we have in communication, being seen and being heard just as individuals. And then on top of that, imagine if you are nonverbal and now you're a child in a family that everyone's verbal and what that experience is like and how to bridge this gap, how to bring these two conversations together, how to bring the verbal and nonverbal together. So let's just all admit we're all nonverbal and we're all verbal. We're all nonverbal learning to communicate and we're all verbal trying to learn to communicate nonverbally in the telepathic realm, which is the conscious realm, which is the unseen realm. So many ways we're all learning to communicate multidimensionally, to say it easily. We're all learning to communicate multidimensionally. We're learning to open our mouths in the right way, nonverbally and verbally, and the other way around. So this is about people connecting. This is about communication and connection. And, you know, okay, good. Labels and special classes and all this, like, you know, keeping people in boxes and keeping them separate from each other to understand what's happening. This is a fork. This is a knife. This is a spoon. And we need to do that to identify things. However, we're going to get to a point where we're like, yeah, but we just want to eat. So we get to a point where we all want to commune and we want to learn to communicate to each other in every which way there is. And really, that's the bigger picture. That's the bigger story here is how to be felt and seen and heard and how to help other people feel and see you. There's many of you sitting watching that if you were to give yourself a report card on how people see you and the feedback you're getting, and the results you're getting, and if they really see you and hear you, and you grade yourself, you give yourself a starting F+, some C+, some A+. Like for me, I would say, because I'm so honest, I would say how I think people see me, I would give myself a report card. They see me at I'm trying to do an upgrade this week, C- going into B. So I'm giving myself kind of a B that people are like, yeah, I kind of see what she's doing. I think I get it. And I'm like, I'll take it. That's good enough. Oh my God. Yes. Because my whole life, people are like, what is she doing? It's very weird. And I'm like, yeah, I'm just part of the weird club. Don't mind me. And then I realized, wait, I can do it differently. And so I've been changing that. And I think that's the people who tune in and watch our show and like relate to us. They're like, yeah, we're the weird ones too, but keep doing it what you're doing, Araya, because I got my own way and my own version and I want to do it that way. And you're exactly the same. And Riz is exactly the same. We're doing life how we want to do life. So your autistic kids, your nonverbal kids all have unique individual character traits, desires, needs, wants, thoughts, and they're so articulate. they speak so refined and they're so intelligent when they actually learn how to communicate on our little prehistoric devices. They actually tell us
profound things way beyond their age, their chronological age. Profound, deeply compassionate, loving, intelligent messages and things that they're thinking about, learning and doing that are, it's, without giving too much of the tapes away, it's phenomenal. And so that's going on all inside of them. And that's going on inside all of us. We all have these such like deep, rich inner worlds. Every single person has such a massive inner world, and we're all trying to figure out how do we get all of this out here.
It's very, very well said. And that's exactly what this is all about. Yeah. Thank you for having this conversation with me and bringing it to the world. And thank you to the filmmakers and the cameramen and all the people that helped to make the tapes and the researchers and everybody involved in this conversation that's far beyond just even the telepathic tapes, everybody in this conversation. And thank you to autistic children and their parents and savants and all these like labeled people that came here with higher intelligence to actually guide us. I thank all of you. I thank everybody on the Hill. If you're watching and you're listening, I thank even the guides that came through, like Riz channeled last night, Phineas, and the spirit guide was talking about this topic, and all the guides that we channel that is helping to evolve this conversation, that we can all be seen and heard by each other by knowing that we're not separate. We're all one, and we're here to have this experience together and to help each other evolve. So thank you, everybody, and we'll see you next time.